This is Jalen Baker, and you're watching Time to Connect.
Hey, Jalen Baker, man, thank you so much for taking the time to connect. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, man, and I'm assuming you're still in Houston?
Yep.
Yeah, I know you were in Houston last night because I was there for your record release at the Houston Piano Company, and man, you guys crushed it. It was beautiful.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming down and checking us out. Like, really appreciate it.
It was so refreshing to see. I've sort of known this for a while, but I'm one of these people probably who leans on New York a little too much for jazz, and obviously there's plenty of great jazz all around the country. But I guess I didn't realize how close to home quality jazz is, and I'm glad you're opening my eyes to that. One of the things I want to talk to you about is the Houston music scene. We get to it. Obviously, we want to talk about your music, your recordings, your gigs. But let's start with some personal history, if you will. Give people a sense of. I know you were born in D.C., raised in Houston. Maybe talk about how old you were when you moved to Houston, what life was like as a kid in Houston for you.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't remember really anything from DC. I think I moved here when I was 6 months old. My parents moved here. My mom's from Houston. So her and my dad met in DC, and I guess 6 months after I was born, they moved back home to Houston. And I had I guess, a decently musical childhood just because I went to the performing arts elementary school. So
Oh, elementary school.
yeah.
Wow.
I guess
Yeah.
they would call it magnet schools, and arts magnet essentially. So when you're in the third grade, you have to do something. You have to either sing, play a string instrument, or play a band instrument. And man, I had this one friend named, ironically, his name was Jalen too. His name was Jalen Archie. Great drummer, still now. And he was maybe in the first or second grade playing better than some people might be playing now.
Wow.
And I was like, man, I kind of want to try doing that. So when the time came for me to choose an instrument, I was able to pick percussion. So stuck with that. I guess once I got a little bit more serious in about the fifth grade, I started taking private lessons. And there with this percussionist in town named Sam Dinkins. I really only wanted to play drums, but he was really adamant about having all of his students learn all of the percussion instruments. So timpani, the mallet stuff, the hand drums. So that was kind of my first introduction to like the more mallet side of the percussion world.
Mm-hmm.
But to that, through middle school, I guess, which was another performing arts middle school, I was playing mostly kind of like things more in the classical realm and jazz drum set. So I still hadn't really gotten into jazz vibes quite yet. And after middle school, I got into the performing arts high school, HSPVA, that most people are familiar with, because that's where like the Robert Glaspers, the Jason Morans, or Chris Dave, Eric Harlan, Kendrick Scott, Mike Moreno. That's the school that all of them went to. And I got in for classical percussion. I really, at the time, wanted to play in a symphony or in an orchestra. But all of my friends at the school were in the jazz program. So like I was always, especially coming from like more of a drum centric background, I was always fascinated with that side of things. But man, when I tell you, like, the friends that I had that were playing drums, it was scary. Like,
yeah.
And like I was a good drummer, but the way some of those guys were playing, like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Jeremy Dudden. So Jeremy Dudden, he plays with Joel Ross. He's on Joel Ross's first two records, and
Gotcha.
And he plays with James Francis too. If you're familiar with James, he's on James's records. So I went to school with both Jeremy Dudden and James Francis. And I think maybe my junior year, I heard a Stephon Harris album called Urbanus or Urbanus. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but that was like my first real introduction to jazz vibes. And I was like, man, I think I can try that, because I already had all of this technique and facility on the instruments, on marimba specifically. I was like, okay, I just got to kind of figure out which notes to hit. And so I started taking lessons with a local vibraphonist named Chase Jordan, who's great, still plays down here. And I guess my senior year, I made the decision to audition to be a jazz major in college. So relatively, for Houston, I guess for a Houston musician, a relatively late start into the music, but probably for most people, right on time.
Yeah.
So went to college, went to Columbia College in Chicago, spent 4 years there, got my undergrad degree there. That was a great experience. I love Chicago so much.
Yeah, it's a great city, man.
Yeah. And then after those 4 years, I went down to Florida State to get a master's degree in jazz studies. And that was a great experience too. Tallahassee wasn't quite as fun as Chicago, but
right.
But yeah, that was kind of like, I guess, my early introduction into all of music from elementary through college.
And I think I might have known this before, but watching you last night perform, I think it's pretty apparent that you were a drummer. And tell me, is it true that most vibraphone players either came through the drums or the piano? Is that true?
Yeah, I'd say
Yeah.
so. I think
You look at
like
Joel Ross, he came through the piano.
Exactly. I was about to say, Joe's a good friend of mine. I know for a fact that he kind of grew up playing a lot of piano. So different paths to the same destination, I guess.
Yeah. Right on, man. And let's see, what kind of music were you listening to as a kid there in Houston?
Man, so kind of anything that was coming on the radio. So hip hop, R&B. My mom loves like Earth, Wind and Fire, the OJ, Stevie Wonder. So a lot of the Motown stuff, the Temptations. So I listened to a ton of that stuff, and a lot of gospel. I went through a heavy gospel phase. I was playing drums in church for a while.
Yeah.
So all of that to me is like obviously very, very connected with one another. It's just the subject matter might be a little different from genre, but they all sound similar to me.
And did I understand you to say you made that leap to vibes at about 16 years old, something like that?
Probably 16, 17. Yeah.
Did you have any? One of the things that I wonder about with vibe players, and I don't know too much. I haven't really talked to too many vibes players, but I always wonder about carrying around your instrument. I mean, drums is a hassle, obviously, but
yeah.
I mean, like when you're going to New York, I want to talk to you about this gig you have coming up with Jonathan Blake this fall in New York. Obviously, you don't take your instrument with you, right?
Yeah, no.
Are they pretty standard in terms of renting one there, or they provide one? How does that work?
It kind of depends on the gig. I'm still learning how to navigate that. Truth be told, just because different cities create different obstacles, I guess. Like obviously here in Houston, I just use my own, and mine packs up pretty easy. So the whole thing, it breaks apart and folds up into 3 cases. And they stack like all 3 of the cases stack like a dolly. So I can just roll it out.
And so if you're, for example, I know you're playing gigs in Florida coming up. If you're driving, you can just drive with that thing, right?
Yeah, but I think I'm fortunate that since I lived in Florida, I've met enough people.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah, I've met enough people to where I don't really have to travel with it. Like I know at least one person. There's the thing I always say. There's always at least one vibraphone in almost every city.
Gotcha. So how old were you? A little bit of a random question, but I'm still thinking about just you coming up. And by the way, how old are you?
28 now.
28. And how old would you, if you remember, how old were you when did you have a moment where you said, this is what I'm going to do. This is my life. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a professional musician, and that's my life.
Probably about my senior year when the college stuff starts becoming more real.
Hmm.
And I think I always kind of knew, like, I've always been around music and music schools, and like my friends are just some of the most amazing musicians that anybody will ever hear, even when we were in middle school, like, so in elementary school. So I think there might have been a time where I was thinking about not doing music, but I think ultimately I always knew in the back of my mind that I was gonna pursue it full force.
And that is cool that you got to play with so many and be influenced by so many great musicians. How long have you talked about Paul Cornish last night? How you've known him for a long time? By the way, what planet is he from? My God, that guy,
He's different, right?
phenomenal. You know, he in a weird way kind of reminded me of Monk in the sense that, you know, and on the record I don't hear Monk, but watching him play, there's that thing that Monk did where it's almost like you almost don't want to watch because it looks like it's not gonna happen. It's like you can see him thinking. It's like he's working out a math problem, and then all of a sudden, man, he's hitting that right note. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Paul,
Anyway, how long have you known him?
man, since I probably met Paul when I was 10, and he was Paul's like a year or two younger than me. So probably I was probably in about the fifth grade. He was in the fourth, so it's creeping up to about 20 years now.
Yeah. Man, that's
And
incredible.
he's always been like that.
Yeah. But and you yourself, you're phenomenal, man. But all the musicians that you got to be around, I can see that at a very early age, you could picture yourself being a professional musician for sure. And did I hear you once say that Jason Moran was one of your mentors?
Yeah, from a distance, Jason has been very helpful,
Okay.
and that's pretty new. Um, Over, I'd say, like the last 3 or 4 years.
Hmm.
He's actually really close to an uncle of mine who's also a jazz musician. They went to PBA together,
Gotcha.
and Jason's been a nice guiding force from a distance. So I'm really appreciative of him. He's thrown me some opportunities, and it's funny, like he'll like randomly email me, be like, "Hey man, saw a video that you posted, sounding good. We're gonna get a lesson soon, and just chat." I'm like, it's funny because he has my
Nice.
phone number. Like he could just text me. He
That's
emails me.
nice. Yeah. That's
But that type of thing makes any musician feel really good, you know.
You bet. You bet. And you know, I told you that I got turned on to you by Jonathan Blake, and he spoke really highly of you. And he's even using words like, man, I think he might be one of the next big things. So
That's
so
nice.
strong words there. And I know that makes you feel good. And let's go ahead and skip to there. How did the connection with Jonathan come about?
So that's a funny one. So last year, 2022, I guess I'll start even further back. I met Jonathan when I was in Chicago, like maybe a freshman at the
Gotcha.
Jazz Showcase. He was playing with Robbie. Um, and Jonathan and my uncle of mine, Jason Hainsworth, who's the jazz director at San Francisco Conservatory, they went to William Patterson together.
Mm.
So I was introduced to Jonathan around that time by my uncle. And fast forward some years, I think he's always kind of kept an eye out on what I was doing. And last year, this band that you just saw, we performed at the Jazz Gallery up in New York.
Nice.
And to our surprise, Jonathan came to the show. It was really nice of him. That was my first time actually meeting him in person. And he super nice guy. I mean,
Yeah,
you've talked to him.
you can't find a better human being.
Yeah. And he was like, "Yeah, man, we're gonna play soon. We're gonna play soon." And there were a couple times I think we attempted to get something together, but the world was real strange about 3 years ago.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
So he was like, "Man," he was like, "I owe you one." And he texted me like in February. He was like, "Man, can you play with me at the Vanguard?" I was like, "Man, that's quite the one to owe somebody, right?"
No kidding. Will that be your first time playing the Vanguard?
That'll be my first time. Yeah,
Man,
that'll be my first time going into the Vanguard.
no way. Okay, man.
That is crazy. I've never been able to, because when I graduated, up until 2020, I was always in school. So, meaning I was broke. So, like 2020 happened, and I was supposed to be spending quite a bit of time in New York, but obviously that didn't happen. And I've just, at this point, I've gotten like so busy. I just haven't really had time to just, when I'm in New York, I'm usually doing something. So I'm like, man, that's crazy that I have not been able. I've been pretty much everywhere else up there except for the Vanguard.
Well, I'm telling you, man, when you walk down those stairs and walk into that, let's see, I'm trying to remember, was it, I think it was Sullivan Fortner who called it the red. Man, I can't think of what he called it. It was a funny name. But when you walk in that room, if you don't get goosebumps, then I don't think you're breathing. You just feel the presence of the history,
Yeah.
the pictures on the wall, and the people, you know, who we know played there. And it's one of those meccas, man. And good for you. Who knows? Maybe I can show up for that gig. I'm going up this week to see Jonathan's Pentad show. So
Cool.
gonna get to see that. That's a phenomenal.
Great band,
man. I'm telling you, every one of them are just phenomenal. So I'm gonna get to do that. But yeah, that's at Smoke. But I'm gonna go see Joe Lovano at the Vanguard, because I don't if I'm in New York, I'm gonna go to the Vanguard. I don't care who's playing there.
you got to, right?
That's the Mecca. Well, man, who are your musical heroes? Who would you say, let's say, of the older generation? I know Bobby Hutcherson's got to be one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be vibraphonist, but who are name some of the older folks that as you listen to them were really inspiring to you in particular? I mean, maybe to answer that question, we can just read your shirt. Let's see that shirt you got on there.
Yeah, man, all the legends, and
nice.
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah, these my guys.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so pretty much everybody, to me, these are like, you know, the fathers of the instrument. The only guy I forgot, and I hate that I forgot to put him on, was Steve Nilsson. And, you know, he's a hero of mine, but I guess going back even further, Milt, obviously.
Yeah.
That was he was one of the first that I heard. Who else? Milt and Cannonball, they have a record called Things Are Getting Better. That was one of the first, like, swinging records that I heard. Beautiful record, and is like so soulful. Like, those guys are great.
Yeah.
I love Miles. Like, love Miles. Everything he's ever done. Trying to think. Everybody in that band.
Musically, at least.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. There's a great, if you haven't seen this, there's a great little YouTube clip that you should watch. He was on 60 Minutes, and I think it was Morley Safer said something to him about the bad past that he's had, and Miles kind of bristles a little bit, like, what do you mean? He said, well, weren't you a pimp at one time? And Miles looks at him, he goes, is that bad? Yeah,
gotta love the transparency, right?
Yeah, he was quite a character for sure. But yeah, man, you gotta name it. You gotta call that name too. Who else comes to mind?
Everybody in that band. Herbie is a big inspiration.
Yeah.
Herbie actually might be the first jazz musician that I heard. The Headhunter stuff.
Yeah.
The Watermelon Man specifically.
Yep.
That version.
Yeah.
Let's see, Wayne Shorter. I think the first record I heard from Wayne that he wasn't playing with Miles was Juju.
Yeah, Juju's a great record.
Yeah, and that kind of led me. You know, it's all branches to other people that led me to McCoy. And Tony Williams. I love drummers. Tony Williams, obviously. Like him on what's the track? Well, on Four and More. It's like, man, him and Ron Carter is just like, there's moments in there that will just, if they played again, it probably, it wouldn't happen that way, but it's like, man, they're so connected.
Yeah.
So I think I'd say probably the obvious names, but maybe they're not obvious. I don't know, but everybody in Miles' band, Coltrane.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And it's funny because I think since I started later, like when I was 17 or 18, my teacher here gave me a DVD of Branford doing A Love Supreme. And I swear to you, for at least 6 months, I thought it was Branford's. It's like, man, like it's kind of interesting how you get to different ways. And then I remember talking to somebody about it. He was like, I think maybe my uncle. He was like, man, no, that's John Coltrane's music.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, it's embarrassing, but it's. I think that like gives like a nice, healthy amount of perspective, like in how, you know, how we get from point A to point B.
Right. So I have a what if question for you that I like to ask guests, and it's a tough choice, but you can bring back any of the old masters for one night and you get to play with them. Who's that going to be?
That's a tricky question. Probably Elvin.
Elvin? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, right on.
Probably Elvin or Tony. I don't want to pick one. It would have to be a drummer though. It'd be Elvin or Tony.
Yeah, I can tell you love the drummers for sure. Who's someone playing today that if you got a call from them tonight and said, "Hey, I want you to play this gig with me," that you would just go, "Oh hell yeah!" I mean, somebody that you would really love that's playing today that you have not played with that you would really love to play with.
It's another great question. Man, it'd have to be someone from Houston. So I'd say either Jason Moran, probably Jason Moran.
Yeah.
But I haven't got to play with Jason yet. And his music's also a lot different from what I typically play. Mm-hmm. So I think that would unlock something in me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, man, I'm sure you will play with him and many more. You've obviously got quite a future ahead of you. It's a real honor and a pleasure talking to you. You know, I don't really talk to a whole lot of younger people, and it's just really cool to watch to connect with somebody like yourself who is clearly on the rise. Gibton played on your first record, and I actually did interview him on here, and okay. So I've talked to a few younger folks, and by the way, I think Warren Wolf is going to be on the show later too. So we'll start getting all the current vibraphonists on the show. So let's talk about your new record, Be Still.
Yes.
You know, I wish it would be on vinyl, but
soon, hopefully.
I hope so. Blue Note should pick this up and put it on vinyl. But let's talk about it. I mean, it's killer. First, let me just ask you about the title. Be Still. How did you come up with that, and how does that frame the record for you?
Yeah. So I'm religious. I'm a pretty spiritual person, and I think that's one of the more popular scriptures in there. And I'm not going to recite it word for word because I don't want to mess it up. But the idea, I guess, is kind of letting go of control in a sense.
Amen. Yeah.
And I think 2020 was such an interesting time because I think that was the first time, at least for me personally, that I felt like I couldn't control anything that was going to happen. I've always been like pretty calculated, like real hands-on, especially when it comes to like my career. Every decision is very, very thought out. And at that moment, it was like, oh, well, it doesn't really matter what I have planned because the forces at work have a different plan for us all, you know?
Yeah.
And I kind of took that as like, well, I guess you kind of got to live every day like it's the last, or maybe you won't get to do something tomorrow. Who knows? And I think that's why I really wanted to write some energetic music, and a lot of it on there is very energetic, and it's supposed to kind of it's supposed to resemble like, yo, man, this might be the last time you get to play. So
okay, yeah,
let's get it all out, and that's just kind of how that band just naturally functions. I didn't have to say anything. We're just kind of like, oh, if we're gonna play, we're gonna play.
Yeah, you guys are gelling. You were really crushing it last night for sure, and on the record, and so right off the bat, Twas. I mean, Jalen, that tune sounds like a classic. that sounds like something that, that we're going to be listening to 20 years from now, if not longer. And I could see people covering that. It's just when you wrote that, did you have that feeling of, okay, this one's real?
I mean, I don't know, man. Funny enough, I don't even remember writing that tune specifically. I think,
Really?
yeah, it's just because I think that's probably the oldest tune on the record.
Okay.
Um, and I think I wrote it my last year in college. And I'm gonna tell you what I was trying to do is I was really trying to capture kind of how Stefan writes a
Okay.
little bit. Like he has this arrangement of nothing personal and similar feel, different. It sounds a lot different, but like I was just like, man, I wanted something in. I really wanted to write something energetic that could be the opening for a set or a record, and it has a nice melody. I think
Yep.
it's fun.
Beautiful melody.
So I guess at the end of the day, to answer your question, yes, in a sense, because I wanted to write something that sounded fun for everybody, the people playing it and the people listening.
Yeah. Yeah, really memorable tune. Great tune to open the record. Really sets the tone. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm blanking on your drummer's name, but he's so strong on that song too.
Oh, Gavin, yeah.
Yeah, Gavin just kills on that song. Well, all four of you do. And then the title track is really beautiful. You have to tell our listeners here the story you told last night though about Lexi's Lullaby.
Oh, yeah. So that's actually my favorite song on the record. My
Beautiful
favorite
song.
song,
Beautiful song.
and wrote it for my little cousin who she spent a lot of time over the house when the pandemic was happening because her parents were working from home. So it's hard to have a baby in the background when you're on the phone or on Zoom or whatnot. So she would spend a lot of the days over here, and I'm not great with little kids. Like I can watch, but like it's hard for me to just like entertain them all the time. But she is like relentless, and it was nice to, I guess, to just see just a carefree attitude, like I was saying, with like being able to be still and just live every day to the fullest. Like the only people on the planet that do that are kids, are babies. Really, like the world can be crumbling down around us, and a baby still have a smile on their face trying to play. And I think that's like really unique, really powerful. You know, but I think that song's been doing really well on specifically Amazon Music, and I was saying yesterday that it has over 400,000 streams, and the playlist that it has the most streams on is Jazz for Pets. So I guess
Jazz for Pets.
Jazz for Pets on Amazon Music.
Who knew, man? Who knew?
Never know where the music's gonna end up. Not in 2023, man. Like it.
That's right.
So funny.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, it's a great record, man, and of course, there's three covers, including one by two of my favorites, Bobby Hutcherson and Joe Henderson. Both just killer. Did you anything that you can say with respect to how you decided to include those three covers in particular?
Yeah. So the Bobby Hutcherson tune, Herzog.
Yeah.
I actually I'll credit Jason Moran with that one in a sense of he asked me. He did this exhibit at the Houston Contemporary Arts Museum where he recreated Slug's Saloon, and that's the place that legendary jazz club in New York where like Lee Morgan was unfortunately killed at.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Slugs, right?
Yep, Slugs.
Yeah.
And so it was real cool installation. Like the stage was all set up. All the instruments were on the stage except for the vibes, of course, but they were all playable. And Jason asked me to do a set of Bobby Hutcherson music. So nice. I had been in love with Bobby's music before, but I hadn't played Herzog. Like enough people don't play Bobby's original compositions. I'm actually glad Brian Blade recently released an album of, I think most of it is Bobby's originals.
Yeah.
And so I learned the tune for that gig, and I was like, oh man, we gotta play this on the record. And that was, I think, a good decision because it fits the vibe of the other music, in my opinion.
Yes.
And
definitely.
And Jen Ricochet, the Joe Henderson tune,
right?
I think Gavin actually Gavin put me on to that tune specifically. So me and Gavin are the only ones who live in Houston full time. So we play a ton of gigs together.
Gotcha.
And on this particular day, he was leading and he wanted to play the song, and he had this hip arrangement where, you know, it's not swinging, it's a little bit more of a groove. And I was like, bro, we got to record this. Like, it's just a fun song, you know.
Nice.
And it's one that I haven't heard too many people cover.
Right. I'm not sure I have either. Yeah.
So
yeah, cool.
That was that.
And then the third one is Body and Soul. Is that right?
Yes. This was one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
Like ever.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, hey, man, I can't believe how quickly time has gone by. I don't want to take too much more of your time, but a couple of maybe rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Let's see. What are you listening to right now? Just in the last.
Am I listening?
What's on your turntable or in your CD player? I mean, you don't have to be literal about that, but just what's some of the stuff you've been listening to lately?
So right now, and maybe about the last year, I was really listening to this trumpet player who recently passed named Ron Miles.
Okay.
He lived out in Denver. Beautiful stuff. It's a great band. With funny, Jason's name has come up a lot today. Jason Moran's on piano, Brian Blade, Bill Frisell. Forget who's on bass, but beautiful records that he wrote. And I'm trying to think what else. I've been listening to a lot of Jonathan's music because I'm gonna have to play it.
Yeah.
Funny enough, like I feel like that's kind of how things go when you're really having the gig, is like you're learning people's music.
Sure. Sure.
I'm in Jeremy Pelt's band right now, so I listen to a lot of his stuff, trying to get the vibe of it. And these guys are just incredible players. I would listen to their music regardless if I was playing with them or not.
Right. Yeah. Favorite venue that you've played?
That's a great one, man. Probably Ronnie Scott's in London. Okay. Probably Ronnie Scott's until I play at the Vanguard.
Yes. I have a feeling that will transcend that one, but maybe not. So what would you point out memorable show that you've attended that you just think, and I'm sure there's been many, but one's got to stick out when you think about some of the great shows you've attended? What comes to mind?
Ambrose Akinmusiri, at the Constellation in Chicago.
Okay.
I remember that show very vividly, and I have no record of it. I wish I recorded it. But like, I remember exactly where I was sitting, and I remember most of the music that they were playing. It was this quartet, maybe about, like 6 or 7 years ago. And I don't know if you've been to Constellation in Chicago.
I have not.
Beautiful venue. It's really intimate. It's like you can almost reach out and touch the guys on stage. And it was just powerful stuff. Like, you can tell those guys were so locked in. Like, I remember at one point, Ambrose just walked to the corner of the room and just sat down. You know, you could tell, like, it was just like really, really heavy energy in the room. Mm-hmm. And so fortunate to have been there for that. And I remember Justin Brown took just one of the most incredible solos on drums.
Nice.
So that's probably one of my favorites.
And what comes to mind if I said your most memorable gig that you've played?
Man, it changes all the time. Probably the first album.
Other than last night, of course.
Yeah. First album release 2 years ago, same room. But I remember that because I cried my eyes out, man.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. Fantastic. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for taking this time. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'll say it again. I really enjoyed that show last night, and I've got your website now. I'll start tracking when you're playing, and definitely come see you more often, especially when you're playing in Houston. Good luck on this run with Jonathan up there in New York this fall, and I'm looking forward to seeing this star rise, because I think you've got quite a future ahead of you, and I appreciate you taking this time, man.
Thanks so much for not only doing this but coming to the show yesterday. We really appreciate it. It's always great to get people in rooms, especially here in Houston. So
Yeah, yeah. And we didn't talk about that. There's so much we could have talked about. Maybe just in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, say something about why a guy like you is not in New York, because you know, it's maybe a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction of mine, but I look at a guy like you and I think, man, that guy should be in New York. And you mentioned that you want to do something for Houston. Is that right? Is that one of the reasons you're there?
yeah, I think one of the things that's been tough on the Houston just art scene is that there's so much talent here that it's naturally attracted to New York, right?
Right.
Um, and a lot of guys don't necessarily have the time to split time between New York and Houston.
Mhm.
So I've kind of never really envisioned myself being here until I was pretty much trapped because of the pandemic.
Right.
And I realized that, oh man, you know, New York doesn't need another great musician. Um, and I think it's just better for our just collective like national scene when there's things going on everywhere, not just in New York, not just in LA, but you know, it's just I think if collectively everybody's able to bring up different places in the country, that's only going to strengthen what we already have, especially now with travel
Yeah.
being as easy as it is. You know, people want to come and play in the South and whatnot, but there might not be a ton of opportunities. So they're kind of, you know, they have to do the Northeast or whatever. But I'm like, I would love to at some point be able to get things to a point where I can bring my friends who are in New York down here to Houston,
Yeah.
and feature them on concert series, kind of like we did yesterday, and get some money in people's pockets. And
Yep.
it'll just the more tour routes we have, man, the better this thing can survive, because
Yeah.
it needs to, man.
And maybe some of these guys, one name we didn't mention, by the way, was Kendrick. Some of these guys who are from Houston, even though they're not there, you know, they might be down with helping you out on that effort, you know, coming home once in a while and playing just to celebrate Houston. So I think it's a good idea. I applaud you for doing it. And hey, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking this time. And I wish you all the best, and I'll see you down the road, man.
Thanks so much. It was great talking to you.
Take care.
You too.
Bye bye.